Ladies and gentlemen, we have made it past the halfway mark of the 2023 NFL season, and that means that I'm going to revise, or in this case, create my first ever playoff picture prediction. So, welcome back to Steel Nation.
Here we go, Steelers, here we go. Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, welcome back to Steel Nation. I'm your host, Brian, and we are going into Week 11 of the NFL in 2023. I cannot believe we are so far into the season already. It feels like just yesterday the first kickoffs happened. So, now that we're over halfway in, and I was going to do this last week, but I didn't think about it until it was too late, I'm going to go over what I think the playoff picture looks like as of right now. Now, this isn't like if the season ended today, who'd be in the playoffs. This is my picture of, based on how teams have been doing and what the future looks like in schedule-wise for some of these teams, who I think can make the playoffs and in what seed they would be in. So, the way we're going to do this is we're going to go by conference. We're going to start with the AFC, then we're going to move to the NFC, and we're going to start with the 4 winners of each division. We're going to go from 4 to 1, and then we're going to fill in the bottom 3, the wild card players for each conference to fill out our playoff picture. So, if you guys want to play along with me, put in the comments what your playoff prediction will be, and we can go over, we can talk about it, we can discuss it after this video goes live, and I can see just how differently NFL fans react to different teams being in the playoffs. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Starting off with the AFC, because of course, my Steelers are in the AFC, and I gotta start off with them. In the number 4 slot, with the 4th seed, I actually have an upset team that I would never have put in this slot ever before this season, and that's the Houston Texans. Especially after that big win against Cincinnati in Week 10, the Houston Texans look exciting. They are ecstatic. CJ Stroud is electrifying this team, and with Tank Dell and Nico Collins, it is incredible to watch the Texans go from the team that nobody thought would ever win anything to the team that I think could beat the Jaguars and take over the AFC South. And now I know that is a lot to put on the Texans in their first season as a good team, but nobody expected them to be this good, and they just beat the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the teams that everybody in the league assumed would be a playoff team. So I think that the Texans winning their division and coming in the 4th seed in the playoffs is not out of the realm of possible. Next up, with the 3rd seed, we have the Miami Dolphins. Now, after what happened to the Bills on Thursday night against the Broncos, I think the Dolphins have this division in lock. Now, of course, it's going to be a very competitive between the Dolphins and the Bills, but with Achane coming back off of IR, coming into Week 11, I really think that the Dolphins are going to be able to really put their best foot forward, and as long as they start beating some teams with winning records, I think they might make a deep playoff run. However, no matter what happens in the playoffs, I think the Dolphins have enough momentum throughout the rest of this season to be able to clinch the division and make the 3rd seed in the playoffs. Coming in as your 2nd seed, I have the Baltimore Ravens. I know, as a Steelers fan, it pains me to say this, but I don't see any way that any other team can retake the division from the Ravens at this point. Now, obviously, there is a chance, and I will always bet on the side of the Steelers winning it all, but I'm trying to be realistic here. The Ravens face off against the Bengals come Week 11, and if the Ravens win, that's going to put them at 8 wins. No matter who between the Steelers and the Browns win in our game, that would only put them at 7. So they'd still be a game behind, and it'd put the other team even further back. The way that the division would look if the Ravens won would be Bengals with 5 wins, either the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Cleveland Browns with 6 wins, the other team in that matchup with 7, and the Ravens at 8. And at that rate, I don't see a realm where with the schedule the Ravens have, they fall from grace. So I think it's safe to say that the Ravens have the division clinched at this point. However, this is one that's up in the air because of how absolutely terrifying this division is. Which leaves number one in the AFC, of course, the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl winners. Of course they're going to take the number one seed. They've already won most of their games this season. They've lost twice, and both of those losses were kind of unexpected, but the Chiefs just all around have looked like a really good team. Now, obviously, this could change, but I don't see the Chiefs losing the division to anyone else. I mean, the Raiders just fired their head coach, and while, yes, they've won a couple of games, they've been games against not great teams. The Broncos are sitting at 3 wins on the season, and that's not enough to bridge the gap to catch up to Kansas City at this point. So neither of those teams, I think, have any shot at dethroning the Chiefs, which is why I think that the Chiefs are going to run away with their division and take the number one seed in the AFC for the second year in a row. Now, moving on to the wild card slots, we're going to go here from 5 to 7, going backwards instead of going forwards like we did with the main seeds, the division winners. But this way, we can basically talk about who is safe in the wild card slots and who is not. And the safest I have in number 5 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, even if they don't end up winning the division, I still see them making the playoffs. They're just that good. Now, obviously, their loss to the 49ers this past week was really, really bad. I mean, it was, 30-3? It was like us playing against the Texans early on in the season. But aside from that outlier game, every other game that they've played this year has been a good game. Their game against us, they beat us. So the Jaguars, I think, are a lock for the playoffs. Whether or not they win their division, though, is really up to how the Texans end up playing. Speaking of your Pittsburgh Steelers, number 6, the 6th seed in the wild card slot, the only other AFC North team that I have making the playoffs is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you want to know why? Bullcrap, that's why. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to bullcrap their way to the playoffs, and in my opinion, to the Super Bowl, baby. The Steelers are going to the Super Bowl. In all reality, though, our schedule is kind of 50-50 on whether or not it's going to be tough or not, based on what I've seen in the past. But also based on what I've seen in the past, this team can do it. Like, we've beat the Browns once before, and now they don't have Deshaun Watson to fall back on. They're going to be playing one of their rookie quarterbacks, and their defense, while really good, was not perfect against us. And, of course, you've got the Steelers bullcrap. I don't know where it comes from, but we beat teams that we should not beat. So I think going into Cleveland, we can bring a win out of this game. Then, of course, we go up against the Bengals, which is going to be a difficult game because we're in Cincinnati, but it's another winnable game. However, there is a chance that we don't make the playoffs. But because I'm a Steelers fan, I'm going to put the optimism down and say the Pittsburgh Steelers are your 6th seed. And in 7th place in the AFC, you have the Buffalo Bills. Now, their loss against the Broncos on Monday Night Football was atrocious. However, it's the Bills. They play really well. Josh Allen is, by all accounts, a really good quarterback. And after firing their offensive coordinator, I think they turned the season around. Now, I don't think it's enough to get them into the top of their division, but into the playoffs, absolutely. Though I don't see the Bills making a deep playoff run. I see them losing in maybe the wild card round, if not, then the divisional round. But I don't see them making it to the championship or the Super Bowl. However, the Bills making the playoffs, I think, is a lock. Whether or not it's in the top of their division is really hard to tell. But that is your AFC playoff lineup. You've got the Chiefs, Ravens, Dolphins, Texans, Jaguars, Steelers, and Bills. Now, let's hop over to the NFC and see where I have them ranked over there. All right, starting off with the 4th seed in the NFC, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the NFC South is a wild card division. It's the exact opposite of the AFC North. None of the teams in the NFC South are particularly good, but any one of the teams I think can win. Though I think between the Saints and the Buccaneers, they both have an equal shot at winning. So that's why I'm going with the Buccaneers. Mostly because I like Baker Mayfield. Ever since he's left Cleveland, I have been a Baker Mayfield fan. And I just think that he deserves a playoff appearance, if not a division win. However, because of how mediocre the team is and how they're kind of like squeaking wins out of like a hat, I don't see them making a deep playoff run. But even appearing in the playoffs, I think for Buccaneers fans, after losing Tom Brady and getting Baker Mayfield, will definitely be a win. In the third seed, we have the San Francisco 49ers coming off an obliterating win against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which itself came off of a 3-game losing streak. I think Brock Purdy and the 49ers finally catch their footing and run off and clinch the division. Now, of course, the top of this division is a very tough one because they have the Seattle Seahawks to contend with. However, as you'll find out later on in the list, I think either one can win the division, but I give the edge to the 49ers just because they made it to the Super Bowl, not the Super Bowl, but to the championship game last season. And with Brock Purdy, it's just a great story. Have them win the division yet again, make it to the playoffs, and maybe this time they go and clinch that 6th Super Bowl ring. Coming in on the second seed, repping the NFC North, we have the Detroit Lions. Now, this division is stupid. And I don't mean stupid like the AFC North. I mean stupid as in what is happening. Now, of course, you have the AFC North, which is like, what is going on? But you have the NFC North, where it's like, why are you going on right now with the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears? But with the Lions, they're actually really good this season. Like beating the Chiefs week 1, really good. The game against the, not the Ravens, their game this past weekend was incredible. It was an offensive shootout. And just seeing them pull out that win, it affirms in my mind the Detroit Lions have the NFC North on lock. It's going to take a miracle to get that out of their hands. It just so happens that one of the teams in the NFC North does have a miracle, and we're going to talk about them in just a little bit. After we talk about the number 1 seed for the NFC, y'all saw it coming. It's not even close. It's the Eagles. The Kelsey brothers are at the top of each respective conference, as per usual at this point. The Eagles, they're just a good team. Like, they're a great team. And so them sitting at number 1 in not only their division, but also their conference, shouldn't be surprising to anybody. It's definitely not surprising to me that I put them there. This is definitely a team that can make it to the Super Bowl and more than likely will. However, this season has been stupid and they could lose to somebody in the bottom portion of the list, like the number 5 seed, the miracle team themselves, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I'm sure you all have seen what has been going on in Minnesota with the loss of Kirk Cousins and them bringing in the Pastronaut in Josh Dobbs, who absolutely played out of his mind to squeak out a win against the Saints for the Vikings. And I say squeak out not because they barely won, but because in the early portions of that game, they dominated and they treated the Saints like squeaky toys for dogs. And Josh Dobbs comes in and just plays so well in Minnesota that there is a chance that they won't bring Kirk Cousins back for next season. They might just stick with the Pastronaut. And honestly, I don't blame them, which is why I have them bringing in the 5th seed in the NFC, because they're just that good. And if they keep winning, especially with Justin Jefferson coming back, they could very easily compete with the Lions for the division. And if the Lions don't make the number 1, don't win the division, the Vikings will probably take it. I mean, it definitely won't be either Green Bay or the Bears, because let's be honest, neither of those teams are any good this season, which just makes it a miracle that they almost beat the Steelers. In the 6th seed, you have the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this team and the team just below it can definitely switch. In fact, all 3 of these wildcard spots can switch. And it doesn't really matter to me where they are in the wildcard slots, but these are the 3 teams in the NFC that I think have the best shot of making the wildcard slot. And that's the Seattle Seahawks, because the Seahawks, just like the 49ers, are the top of their division. Now, of course, they're going to be fighting with the 49ers for control of the NFC West, but if the 49ers don't make the top of their division, the Seahawks will, and the Niners will still make the playoffs. I just think that the Niners have the momentum they need, and the Seahawks, they don't. And the Seahawks, they've got Geno Smith playing quarterback for them, and he's been doing decently, but they're just not as put together, I don't think, as the 49ers. Now, I could be wrong, and this whole video could end up being completely turned on its head by the time that the playoffs roll around, but I think the Seahawks are safe to make the playoffs, and I feel the same way about this next team, but I'm not comfortable with them both being in the playoffs, not because of some rivalry, but because there's just a good number of teams that should make the playoffs that miss with my list. Which brings me to my number 7 seed, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys all season have been a weird team. They dominate games, or they get destroyed in games. They dominated against the Giants last week, but they got destroyed by the Cardinals earlier on in the season. The 2-7 Cardinals? 2-8 Cardinals, sorry. The 2-8 Cardinals, who just got Kyler Murray back, who just won their next game against the Falcons, they beat the Cowboys without Kyler Murray. And so that makes me kind of nervous for the Cowboys. Now, as a Steelers fan, they can just leave the playoffs. The Cowboys can just go away, and I would not be sad at all. You see these tears? Yeah? There's none there. Because the Cowboys, I can't stand them. Don't like them. Hate them. I'll say that. I hate them. There's only like 2 teams that I hate, and the Cowboys are one of them. But just based on their wins and their statistics, I really think the Cowboys can come off with enough wins and enough momentum to propel themselves into the playoffs. And if they do, and here's my Super Bowl prediction, because I'm going to make that now, there are two options that I have for how the Super Bowl goes. One, it's a rematch between the Chiefs and the Eagles, which is most likely because they're going to be the number 1 seed based on my list. But the one that I am the most fond of is Steelers Cowboys. That would be a fun game. And you know, based on the nature of Steelers football this season, the Steelers would win that Super Bowl. We would go in there and we would punch those Cowboys in the face until we almost lose to them, and then we would intercept them in the end zone, and we would win the Super Bowl, and we would be the first 7-time Super Bowl champion. But that is for my playoff predictions, which will come out once the playoffs start. With all that being said, I want to know y'all's opinions about my playoff brackets. Move on. There we go. About my playoff brackets. And I want to hear you guys in the comments below. Who do you think is going to win each of the divisions? Who do you think is going to make the wild card rounds? And who do you think is the most likely team to make the Super Bowl from each conference? I'm going to be responding to as many people as I possibly can, because this is what football is about. It's about talking to other fans and conversing about how we think the season's going to go. And I love doing it. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I have been Brian, and as always, go Steelers.